England versus Italy, grand finals of the Euro 2020 Cup. And it's kind of still a bit surreal. England, of course, haven't met a final like this since 1966. Italy, constantly at the top, pretty decent team to say the least. They've beaten a lot of great teams to get to where they are today. But we need to kind of reflect a little bit on what's come before because, and I really liked this headline from The Express, by the way. Don't get to say that often, but I did. And that was the replay and all of the controversy surrounding the English fans' behaviour during the games. Now, if this flipping article wants to load, that would be absolutely amazing. We can wait a little bit, or we can just do this. Maybe. I'll put something else up. If you don't know what the controversy is, the controversy is that UEFA has now opened disciplinary proceedings against England following Denmark's semi-final. There were two really big criticisms of the English fans here. The first is, as you can see from this thumbnail, somebody shined a green laser into the eyes of the Danish goalkeeper Kasper Schmeichel. Schmeichel? Please, again, not the craziest man on the football names. So you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong there. But yeah, first of all, that was the first big thing. May have affected his eyesight and his ability to do his job. Of course, this was also right before. I believe this was right before they took the penalty, wasn't it? With a score of 1-1 at the end of normal time, Raheem Sterling won a penalty for the first half after extra time going down in Dane's box. Denmark coach was feeling bitter about the referee's decision to award a spot kick, but mentioned that the spare ball had been won on the pitch and was a build-up to that moment. All I'm saying is that the referee was clearly going for Denmark and was clearly in favour of Denmark in that. It was absolutely ridiculous. A fan shone a laser pen in the Denmark goalkeeper's face as he prepared to face Harry Kane's penalty. He saved the spot kick, but Kane scored the rebound, so it's even more of an issue because, of course, they were shining light in the face of a really key moment in the match and a moment where Harry Kane scored the winning and decisive goal. So, of course, massive problem if that affected the goalkeeper's ability to actually save the goal. European football's governing body released a statement that read, charges against England was use of laser pointed by the supporters, disturbance caused by supporters during the national anthem. That's the second charge that the English fans, or the English team, have been levelled against them. I think it's really unfair, actually, that the English team are having these allegations put against them, because it's not their fault. The English team didn't go into the match with a whole bunch of laser pointers trying to get the Danish to distract themselves. But the fans were not only doing this, but booing during the Danish national anthem, which of course is very unsportsmanlike, and especially for an away game would have affected or potentially affected Denmark's performance. And finally, on the third charge, I forgot about this one actually, this one's a bit crazy. Lighting fireworks. Yes, some supporters managed to light fireworks during the game. And I think that is... how that even happens, how they manage to light fireworks anywhere near the stadium is beyond me. Because you'd think security would be all over them. But apparently they did. It is a breach, and we have to start talking about the fact that if England's team might get punished for this. Although I do need your guys' help when it comes to what UEFA actually has power over. Because I'm not entirely sure if UEFA can do anything or to the English team who would be punished for this sort of thing. Because again, it seems unfair to punish the team for this, because it wasn't their doing. But of course, it is England's doing, right? This is the English response to Denmark being at Wembley. So it is something that somebody needs to be punished. The question is who and how much authority the UEFA have. But yeah, it was incredibly disappointing. However, when interviewed about the laser pointing allegation, we say allegation, somebody did it, we know it happened. We had the Danish goalkeeper saying this.
Laserlys mod dine øjne og sådan noget i går. Opdagede du det, og er det korrekt? Straffesparket, tror jeg det var.
Ja, jeg oplevede det ikke på straffesparket, fordi den var bagved mig på min højre side, men jeg oplevede den i anden halvleg. Sagde det til dommeren, og jeg tror han var ude at sige et eller andet til en af de andre linjedommer, jeg ved det ikke, men
Oh, so there was an incident during the match actually where the referee told one of the I think it was another referee, and they were telling the UEFA people about something, and a lot of the commentators were like, "Hang on a minute, what's going on here? What's all this about?" That's probably what this was about. The laser being shot during the penalty apparently, did not affect the goalkeeper's performance in that moment, but it was apparently consistent through the second half, which would have been a big or throughout the rest of the second half. Sorry, no wait, they didn't score in the second half. It was extra time. Okay, interesting. At least it didn't affect the penalty, and nobody scored once he said he was being affected by it, right? I think that's what we can all take away from this, because if a goal had been scored and this had been a key deciding factor in the goal, goodness knows what UEFA would have had to do in that situation. But yeah, we're getting charges against us now, and there's been a lot of movement from several different key big football names like Gary Lineker and Gary Neville to say, come on guys, we can't boo we effed up this time, but we cannot be booing the Italian national anthem when the finals match happens on Sunday. And I mean, we just can't. We really can't. It's so disrespectful. Imagine how hurt or how ridiculous you would think of the other side, of any team really, in the other side of the stands, if they were booing your national anthem. And I know, especially amongst younger generation, a lot of people find God Save the Queen a little bit corny, but it is the song of this nation. The English teams sing it every single time they go into a game. And when you have, if people were booing that, you could imagine the English would be absolutely up in arms. And you'd see it all over places like the Daily Express, the Daily Mail, the Sun. Oh my goodness, I can't believe this. The blimmin' foreigners have managed to boo our national anthem. Look at how horrible they are. And yet we do it. And it's we really shouldn't do that, I mean, this article's from The Independent. I didn't manage to see it in the Daily Mail. That's not to say the Daily Mail didn't cover it. I very easily could have missed it. But, they're probably not going to go all in on the England fans once they're, plastering their front pages with, "We got to the final," And so it kind of led me onto this, it led me to thinking how much of this kind of football hooliganist, behaviour, this attitude, kind of how deeply it runs in football fans. Because I'd like to say a lot of football fans aren't like this. Sorry. But, on the other hand, earlier this year, we did have thousands of fans booing the English team taking a knee, supported by politicians like Priti Patel, as well as a Tory MP who, for the record, is still boycotting the England games at the Euros, despite the fact that we're now doing incredibly well, and seemingly everybody is on the side of England now, even if they didn't agree with the knee taking in the first place. Yeah, Tory MP Lee Anderson says he will not watch on Sunday because players taking the knee, but he will check on the score. Wow. Isn't that just grand? You know, it's flipping ridiculous. But, you know, with this controversy and now the way that we've treated Denmark, I really do have to wonder, and this is the kind of question that I wanted to ask you. How big a problem is this? How big of a problem is this kind of hooliganistic attitude within English football and the fan base in general? Because football is all about friendly rivalry, right? Or at least it's what it should be. You can support your team. You can say, oh, well, X, Y, and Z, you know, this is what I love about my team. There is obviously a long, long history, and it is quite funny in some circumstances, some of the chants that are levied against the opponents. But when it gets to this point, when the rivalry is taken to a point where you're booing the national anthem, or you're booing your own team, or you're deliberately trying to hinder players on the pitch during a game, that's getting out of hand. That's getting so far out of hand. And of course, I'm sure it's not even the worst football, you know, rivalries have gone out of hand. I mean, I can name a number of, or one specific tragedy comes to mind when it talks about fans getting overzealous and putting people in danger solely because of the football team that they support and what they're going to do to, quote, support their team and make them win. Like, it's so crazy. How do we stop, then, these fans from overstepping the line? Is there anything we can do? On the comments of UEFA, we have Orban writing, it's down to the England FA to control their fans. That makes a lot of sense. Similar things happened when the racist stuff happened. Fair enough. I don't know what the FA can actually do to control their fans, but yeah, aside from tell them not to do it. But whatever. It's still really disappointing. And it's a huge issue, particularly when it comes to racist abuse. Come a long way since the 80s, but we still have deep roots in the English game. We have a reputation for it in Europe. Oh, yikes. That is it. I never thought of it from the outside perspective, actually. That's really interesting. Because the fact that it is from the outside perspective that we are seen as the crazy racists, that makes it even worse. That makes it so much worse. Makes me wonder if, you know, there have been incidents like this across Europe. If there are things that come up that, like stories about fans, you know, running onto pitches or being unsafe or chanting racist abuse, sending death threats to their players for maybe missing a penalty or something, or hell, even just take the examples that we see from the English players and apply them to other teams. Like, are there any other teams that have booed other national anthems? Are there any other teams that have booed their own players? Because that's still crazy to me. It's more a reputation for hooliganism in general. The racist stuff is universal. Oh, yeah, okay. Well, that makes sense. I mean, England does have that kind of reputation, right, for being hooliganistic, right? There's very much two sides to Britain in that sense, of the Jacob Rees-Mogg-esque, I only ever wear suits, drink tea, and no, I don't go to Specsavers, I get a monocle, right? That's one side of English culture, and then the other side is very much, "Way, I've stolen a traffic cone and I'm going to tell the police to go do one because I'm in control of my own destiny and I want to collect traffic cones in my house because I'm incredibly drunk and that's just my MO right now." So, yeah, there is a hooliganistic part to English culture, and I think it's very fun. I think that at least, you know, when it's done in the jokey sort of light-hearted manner, that, you know, a bit of craziness can go a long way to making a night out memorable or very good. Just don't put yourself in danger. Don't put other people in danger or do anything that might affect the enjoyment of other people. And you're golden. And especially don't do anything illegal, because illegal stuff famously is pretty bad. Although I might need to do a rain check on that. You can never be too sure. No. So yeah, how do we stop crossing the line? Because this is not the first time it's happened. It won't be the last time it's happened, and it makes me want to get into football less. You know, maybe I'm in the company of horrible racists. I don't really want to. I'm not invested enough in football to be okay with that part of the fan base. You know, like okay. And maybe I'm harping on a little bit too much here, but let's get a bottom line straight to end this story, shall we? Bottom line is, racism is awful. Being a football hooligan, on the other hand, being a little bit crazy, so long as you're not affecting the enjoyment and the well-being of others, is allowed, and you know is probably part of the spirit of football in this country. When you cross that line, however, you will be condemned. You will be absolutely and completely condemned. Because they wouldn't do it to us. A lot of people around, let's for Europe for now, but across the world during the World Cup and events like that, look to the fans and look to the English team as representatives of their country. I don't think that's crazy to say. Because I remember going, yeah, you know, when I was watching the match, I remember thinking like, oh my goodness, look at all these really tall Danish people. Because in some essence, and I don't really know how to describe this, they do represent the country. And when the fans of the English team begin booing the opposition's national anthem, when they begin to try and actively hinder the opponent and make sure that they are less likely to win by either setting off fireworks or shining laser pointers, it shows England as intolerant on the world stage. It does, because football is something that's supposed to unite people. And when you decide to besmirch the other team like this, you are showing that we are intolerant. We do not care what you think or how you feel. We just care about football and our guys winning. And that's not all of what football is about. Football's about the heart, the compassion, and I'm not a massive fan, but you know, it doesn't take a walk around the block to realise that. And when you remove that, what's the rest of the world thinking? Oh no, that's my 2 cents. People that work in football are usually quite good with this stuff. It's the fans that can go either way. Exactly. I mean, when you especially given the contrast to the fans' behaviour with the players' post-match interviews. Like, Raheem Sterling gave a cracking interview, I thought, post-match. Because he's very stoic, Raheem. And he talked, he wasn't even like, oh, we're going to celebrate, we're going to go crazy this time. He was very much like, right, we're going to focus on the next match. We're going to be thankful for what we've got, but we know that we haven't got all the way yet. And until we do, I'm just going to keep working hard. And that spirit, that heart, that is a man who wants the best for his team. Where is that on the England fans' side, man? It's not winning by hook or by crook. It's winning by outplaying the opponent. And yeah, there have been. I heard the story about how Raheem came to being involved in professional football, and how his sister used to drive him to practice and wait in a cafe every day for him to just well, not every day, but like all day on his practice days. He would just stay there. She would just stay there and wait for him to finish his practice. Just keep taking him over and over again. And the amount of sacrifice she made so that her brother could be where he is today is incredible. That's what football's about. Not about cheating. It's not about winning by any means necessary. But anyway, I think that's as much as I can cover the story. If nobody else has anything to add, that's probably where I'm going to end it. Because we're going on to the next one, ladies and gentlemen. We're going on to the big piece of this of the show. And again, I just want to say thank you very much. If you're already watching and you're continuing to watch, then that's really, really good of you. But make sure to follow the links down here. Well, hey, look at that fantastic transition. Maybe I should have the links on the main overlay, but we'll sort that out later. Thank you very much for continuing to watch. I'm about to hop on a train, but thanks for the rest of the show. Well, cheers very much. Having you is always... You're probably the biggest fan, you know. Just want to say that. You're probably the biggest fan of the show. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for all your support. Doesn't go unnoticed. And yeah, I hope to see you maybe where I am relatively soon. Take care, Organ. It's been a pleasure. But we got to get onto the main story of today, and that is the wearing of face masks and the new COVID unlocking. I say new. It's been around for a while, but the clarification on the easing of restrictions going into July the 19th, where we are supposed to be fully reopening the UK and its economy. What are the rules? What's changing? Well, quite a bit. Of course, they are attempting to lift all major restrictions on pretty much every aspect of your lives, and mine too. So, for example, there won't be any limits to how many you can have indoors. Nightclubs will be opening up again. Businesses of pretty much any business can reopen now. You will. One of the big bits in Boris Johnson's press conference on Monday was that the legal requirement for wearing a face covering in shops, public transport, and other enclosed spaces will end. AKA, masks will become non-compulsory. You can choose to wear them if you'd like, but if you don't want to, you will not be penalised by the law. And it is essentially to make all of these measures are being introduced to get the country back to normal again, so that people can start living their normal lives and that we can start to begin to live with COVID, so to speak. Boris Johnson says that the reason why he wants to go ahead with the easing of restrictions now is because he doesn't want to delay them into the winter, where the virus will have an advantage. And he's already delayed them once before, meaning that, yeah, he doesn't want to keep people waiting. He doesn't want to keep businesses waiting any longer than they would otherwise have to. But, ladies and gentlemen, this plan, if you take a look at the figures, is a little bit crazy. That's all I'm going to say. So, let's look at the 4 tests for the unlocking of restrictions. If you remember, these are the tests that Boris Johnson put forward to us in March during the third annual the third national lockdown. And he said that these are the tests that will determine whether or not it is safe to unlock. Well, let's go through them, shall we? Are we doing a good job on this front? Are all 4 of the tests met? Well, let's see. The vaccine deployment program continues successfully. Well, the vaccine program is still going very, very well. The overall vaccine rate is dropping, but of course we are getting to a point where the vast majority of adults in the UK are being vaccinated. The rest of the majority of cases are in either the unvaccinated or in children and young adults who may or may not have had the vaccine yet. Children won't have done, but of course the 18s to 21s are still taking up their opportunity to get their first dose. So as we get more and more of those people vaccinated, the numbers of course will start to go up, but of course there are less people to get vaccinated overall. And genuinely, it just seems that there's less urgency. Second dose vaccinations have been going down for a bit, but are steadying out. And first dose vaccinations are, just basically becoming a crawl compared to where we were in like March. And so the vaccination rate is still successful. Germany is very quickly catching up to us though, and may overtake us in total number of vaccinations in the Europe charts for vaccination, which, talk about world beating, and yet our slacking has allowed Germany to catch up. Would you look at that? Also, I'm pretty sure the Germans are in the European Medicines Agency. And if they get their population vaccinated before us, it's almost as if that doesn't make a difference, Boris. Might have to think about that one a little bit more. But, okay, I think it's still safe to say that the vaccination program, absolutely bombing. We're killing it still. We're just not killing it like we used to. We've gotten a bit complacent, but the vast majority of people have had their first dose and over 60% have had their second dose. So, First test, bada bing. Evidence shows vaccines are sufficiently effective in reducing hospitalizations and deaths in those vaccinated. Well, if you compare our death rate to other times where we've seen really, really high COVID daily infection rates, you'll see that they are practically nothing. Well, not practically nothing. Statistically, very, very little. On a practical level, people are still very much losing their loved ones. But the Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, and the Chief Scientific Officer, Patrick Vallance, have both said that the link between cases, hospitalizations, and deaths has been weakened greatly. And the data shows it. So, on that half, second test, we're still looking good. Infection rates do not risk a surge in hospitalizations, which would put unsustainable pressure on the NHS. Well, people, this is where we start to see a little bit of shaky numbers. Because if we look at our daily new cases, it's doing a bit of a madness. We are currently doing a crazy amount of new infections. We are having some of the highest daily new infection rates in the world. Once again, we were previously world beating on that, if you remember, back in January. But now we're climbing back up on the table once again. And we are at the roughly about the number of new infections that we had when we locked down in January. Now, of course, a lot has changed since January. We've had a lot of vaccinations. That's why you see less deaths and why you're seeing less hospitalization. But there is still a trend here. Again, as Patrick Vallance and Chris Whitty said, just because people are getting vaccinated, the link is being weakened, not broken. And that distinction is very, very important, as we will discuss later. But it's kind of crazy to see cases up here, and yet the government talking about releasing the current restrictions and making some of the most basic restrictions, like compulsory mask wearing indoors, non-compulsory. So I'd say the third test is a little bit wobbly because, again, the infection, the hospitalizations, it wouldn't maybe risk a surge, but hospitalization numbers would inevitably go up as more and more people get COVID and more people, will end up in hospitals because of that. Because there is still the trend there. And finally, the assessment of the risks is not fundamentally changed by new variants of the virus. Now, we've been talking about the Delta variant for months now. And the Delta variant was the reason why it was pushed back from June 21st to July 19th. But with case numbers like this, I'd still argue that it's a pretty concerning variant. You know? Long COVID is still very much a thing and something that we don't know a great deal about. But I tweeted about it later. I might talk about it later, but I made a tweet this week regarding the why you don't want high case numbers, even though it doesn't result in a lot of deaths. And it genuinely worries me because after seeing this data and after basically just ignoring the fourth test, it seems like we are going to be opening up even further, which of course will mean even more infection and even more infection rates. And it comes at a crazy time. Israel has done a number of awful things this year. I think we can all agree on that. But even they are reimposing mandatory mask wearing indoors. Because despite the fact that it was lifted earlier, they saw more and more cases come up in terms of new infections and the daily infection numbers rising. And so they thought, well, we need to reintroduce masks because masks have been proven to lower the spread. Most of these cases were linked to the Delta variant from abroad. But yeah, concern has grown after the country recorded more than 100 daily new cases in successive days after registering 0 earlier this month. That's at 100 cases a day. For reminders, we are currently standing at 32,000 cases a day. And Boris Johnson wants us to make mask wearing non-compulsory indoors. I'll let you stew on that one for a second. It seems like everybody in the country, aside from the government, thinks that this idea is risky at best and downright dangerous at worst. You have multiple scientists writing from Oxford University, a number of really prestigious universities, writing to the government saying we need to do something about this. So 32 scientists signed one letter warning the government is heading down the wrong road and must reconsider its policies to suppress the virus. That was one letter. Another letter signed by a second group of scientists advocated for greater restrictions. So putting back on restrictions for COVID to make sure that the case numbers are kept down. And that one was headed by Professor Tricia Greenhull. I'm going to guess that I got that wrong, but let's say Tricia, Dr. Trish, at Oxford University, and that's backed by 22 other scientists. So two letters saying basically that the science says that this is a dreadful idea. And this is actually, I had a thought, and I want to know what you guys think of this, because this could be a potentially really big reason for why we're seeing all of these new, easing of restrictions and why we're kind of going headfirst into it. And it might have actually been because Matt Hancock left his job. Now, maybe I'm being a little bit tin hat. Please stop me if I am. But Sajid Javid, being the new Health Secretary for the UK, has made his position very clear that he is 100% going for we're going to get out of restrictions ASAP. Of course, Sajid Javid was the former Chancellor, and his entire career has basically been in banking and financial firms. And when I thought about that, that's when it hit me. It's always been about, with this pandemic, balancing health and wealth. The health of the nation versus the wealth of the nation. Can you make sure that people are safe by using lockdowns and other restrictions? And can you make sure that despite, people might not be able to work during those kind of restrictions, can the government support people to give them the money, to give them the resources necessary to comply with their guidelines? So can they pay enough on furlough to get people to self-isolate, etc.? But now, Sajid Javid is a man who clearly, judging by his previous record, is very much in favour of the economy. I mean, he was former Chancellor, for goodness sake. He believed that, getting the no wonder he believes in getting the economy open, right? Because as a man who has, experience in banking and is a Conservative MP, he seems very much, in favour of the banks, in favour of getting people back to work, and in favour of just making sure that people are getting out there and getting back into their jobs, which isn't an inherently bad thing on paper. But a man who is health secretary doing that, who is meant to advocate for the health of the nation, not the wealth of the nation, that's Rishi Sunak's job. Now we have a problem. Because now both the Chancellor Rishi Sunak and the Health Secretary Sajid Javid are both people who are very much in favour of prioritising the wealth of the nation over the health of the nation. And when you have both those sides in agreement on this, in agreement on the fundamental principle that we need to get back to work as soon as possible, despite the incredible number of daily new cases, despite the fact that the link between that and deaths is weakened and not broken, and you have a recipe for a country that will rush out of restrictions and risk facing over 100,000 new infections a day solely to get people back to the office and back to work. Am I going a bit tinfoil hat? Please tell me, because I genuinely don't know. If I'm wrong, and I very well be, I'll take it. But if I'm right, that means that we are in a situation where nobody in government really is sticking up for the health of the nation. And that is genuinely scary. So, what can we do? Well, I mentioned the 100,000 new infections a day number. And of course, the big problem that that's going to create isn't necessarily just the death, although death is a horrible consequence, but also in terms of self-isolation. The government has announced that if you get a ping on your track and trace app and you are double vaccinated, then you will not have to self-isolate from the 16th of August onwards, which is great. That makes sense. That's very much a sensible way to do things, I think. But this is coming in very, very late. What's going to happen, and what Keir Starmer and a number of other opposition leaders are talking about, or what a number of pundits are talking about, is you're going to have a situation where there's going to be hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of new cases a day. Those people are going to have to self-isolate. The people who are around them are going to have to self-isolate. This BBC analysis shows that more than 4.5 million people could still be asked to self-isolate between now and the 16th of August. That in itself is going to be a huge dent to the economy. If you have businesses without any workers, because all of the workers have gone home, then what's the point of opening up? If you're opening up just to see all of your workers forced to self-isolate, and even once they get double jabbed, they still have to self-isolate until the 16th of August, you're not going to have any workers left. Right? Or at least you're going to have enough workers off to the point where businesses that are fully opened up are going, well, what are we meant to do on this little amount of staff? Imagine, it just seems completely ridiculous. And thankfully, it was the first thing that Keir Starmer brought up when he was asking Boris Johnson at PMQs about this. And I want to play this because this is a very, very important clip, and it's important to note what Boris Johnson says here. Roll it.
And to sit on these benches beneath that plaque. Mr. Speaker, we all want our economy to open and to get back to normal. The question is whether we do it in a controlled way or a chaotic way. The Health Secretary told the House yesterday that under the government's plan, infections could go as high as 100,000 a day. Now, a number of key questions fall from that. First, if infections reach that level, 100,000 per day, what does the Prime Minister expect the number of hospitalisations, deaths, and the number of people with long COVID will be in that eventuality?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there are a number of projections, and they're available from the SPI-M graphs. But it's certainly true, Mr. Speaker, that we are seeing a wave of cases because of the Delta variant. But scientists are also absolutely clear that we have severed the link between infection and serious disease and death.
Notice what he says there. Scientists are absolutely clear that we have severed the link between cases and deaths. Now that is just not true. It's also not what they said. At PMQs on the 7th of July, Keir Starmer referred to a statement by the Health Secretary against Sajid Javid. That's basically what we were talking about. The Conservative government's own chief medical officer warns the link between infections and hospitalisations has only been weakened, not severed. So, we now live in a world where there are two possible scenarios. The first one is Boris Johnson knows that he's lying or knows that he's exaggerating to make things seem better than they are. Or he genuinely thinks that and he's completely incompetent. I don't really want to pick between those two, but it seems like that's his understanding of the situation, and it seems like that's what it means. Good one, old Boris.
And currently there are only a 30th of the deaths that we were seeing at an equivalent position in previous waves of this pandemic. And that has been made possible thanks to the vaccine rollout, the fastest of any European country. And I think what people would...
And then he goes on to talk about Keir Starmer's, does he support the vaccine rollout? Which obviously he does. He said it multiple times. And Boris again trying to play the idea of this is Boris Johnson gets to question the leader of the opposition, despite the fact that, you know, if he wants to be questioning Keir Starmer, maybe you should let him become Prime Minister. I don't know. Random idea there. But it's genuinely a scary prospect that millions of people will have to be forced to self-isolate solely on the basis that we could be very easily seeing 100,000 new infections per day. And it's clear to even Tory MPs that the app is going to become a problem once new cases start rising at rapid rates. Stay home, protect the holiday. Tory MPs are deactivating the NHS app as they panic about being pinged just before the Commons breaks up for its summer break. No, you're not reading that wrong. Some Tory MPs are actually deleting the NHS COVID-19 app from their phone, or at least turning it off because they don't want to self-isolate. Have we had a statement from Boris Johnson disencouraging this? Has there been any clarity on this issue in terms of what the NHS app is supposed... Well, we know what the NHS app is supposed to do. But I think it's absolutely crazy that it seems like once again there's a one rule for us and another rule for these guys. They all want to go on their holidays. They all want to make sure that they're not following the rules. And so they're deactivating the app. Oh, what a fantastic idea. Let me go do that. Or let us all go do that. We'll see how the government's response figures there. And there's been one real key thing that we've been that's been mentioned in terms of Boris Johnson's new plan for COVID. And that is in regards to the idea of personal responsibility. Now, he says this because he wants the idea of wearing a mask indoors and to keep socially distanced not to be something that the government mandates, but something that people can personally do and personally take their own responsibility for and decide when they need to do it. But look at these Tory MPs taking personal responsibility. I guess they are taking personal responsibility for what they consider to be their well-being, but clearly not. Taking responsibility for the well-being of others, for the idea that they could catch COVID-19 and potentially spread it, or bring COVID-19 to a different country if they're flying abroad. That's not taking personal responsibility. If anything, it's more of a social responsibility, wearing a mask or socially distancing from people, because you're protecting other people with those measures. You don't wear a mask to protect yourself, you wear a mask to protect the people around you. How do you take personal responsibility for something like a mask when it's not there, again, to protect you? And why should we follow the example of people who, considering they're supposed to be taking personal responsibility, are deliberately avoiding all responsibility? I don't know. It's something that got me roughed up the wrong way. And I'm genuinely speechless when I found this headline today. And so, when it comes to this question, when it comes to this issue, I really only have one question. Will you be wearing a mask indoors once it becomes non-compulsory? Because that is, of course, going to be a massive question in terms of how popular masks are going to be. So if you're in the chat, I really, really do want to know if you are thinking of doing so. And I guess my, follow-up question to that is, surely the U-turn's coming soon, right? Everybody is seeing this as a bad idea. Tory MPs are seeing the flaws in this idea as they are turning off their NHS apps because they know that the massive rise in infections means they're going to get pinged and forced to self-isolate. If scientists, seemingly bits of the media, and Tory MPs and the opposition are all in favour of this idea being the worst and clearly harmful to people, then I can only imagine there is a U-turn to follow. There surely has to be a U-turn to follow, right? Because the alternative is to let this happen. The alternative is to create a situation where people are being forced to take times off work, people are, testing positive by the hundreds of thousands every single day. And we are put in a position where not only are huge chunks of the workforce being missing, but we are also rolling the dice for potentially another variant to emerge. That's what I tweeted about the other day, and I'm going to get that tweet up actually because I want to talk about why I made it and why I think it's important. So yeah, there's living with the virus, and then there's this. Every new case is one more roll of the dice for a chance the virus could mutate or for our vaccines to become less effective. We should therefore do everything we can to also minimise cases. The world is beginning to beat this pandemic, and we cannot get impatient now. When the whole world is currently rolling the dice as well as their vaccine rollout struggle, we shouldn't continue to roll it ourselves. Because every time we roll it, we are inevitably also potentially increasing the chance that there is going to be a new variant. And all it takes is one new variant that is either makes the vaccines more ineffective or makes the vaccine completely ineffective. And all the work that's been done by so many people, all the work that has been put to make sure that this pandemic is over as quickly as possible will have to start again. We'll be back to lockdowns, we'll be back to the most crudest of measures to stop this. And the freedoms that we were so close to getting might just be another year, a year or two away. How long do we have to be in this pandemic before we realise that patience is the key? That there is no rushing this. That in order to be as safe as we can, we have to be as proactive and cautious and patient as we can. Because again, the alternative is opening up. The alternative is risking this virus being born anew and doing even more damage to lives and businesses and jobs across the world. If that is the risk with rolling this dice, then it's not one that I want to roll. And if we're going to live with this virus, if we are going to be getting yearly shots or vaccine shots like we would do the flu, which seems to be the plan, I wouldn't want to have a new vaccine shot as soon as I've just had my first one for this variant. But what do you think? Are you going to be wearing a mask? Are you not? Let me know. I'm incredibly interested. And the last thing that we have to do on the show is I'm going to cover a few quickie stories. Snap. We're going to be talking a little bit about the guilty plea for the murder of Sarah Everard that came out this morning. We're going to be talking a little bit about Trump suing Facebook and Google and Twitter for suppression of free speech and where that lawsuit could be going. But yeah, aside from that, that's really all I have to say on this issue. I think we can probably just jump straight into this, shall we? Quickie stories. Whoa, they're quick and they're pretty good. So, what do we got on the quickie stories section, shall we? I am wondering myself. Well, I know. I prepared all of this in advance, because of course I have. But yeah, let's just quickly go. And yeah, so let's talk about the news that came out today. Sarah Everard murder. A police officer, Wayne Couzens, has pled guilty to the murder of Sarah Everard. You may remember her name because there were a number of big protests earlier this year regarding women's safety. Earlier this year, there was a big breakup from police at a... Is it a cenotaph? Or I don't remember. I forget where the protest was. But it was very much a big deal. and we finally have some justice for that. The man in question, Wayne Couzens, is going to be sentenced in September, and there's still a long way to go, of course. There is a long way to go in terms of the whole issue of women feeling safe on our streets and making sure that they, don't have to essentially be in fear of walking at home at night alone. Because it's something that I know I take for granted as a guy. Like, I can just, walk home and choose that for myself. But some people are not as lucky, and people should not end up in a situation or be forced to be put in a situation like Sarah was. So, yes, it's good that we have justice for this. It is good to see that somebody has been named, and they will be hopefully serving a long sentence for what they've done. Next, quickie stories, bang, 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 bang. We have Trump suing Facebook, YouTube and Twitter for censorship. So, this story comes from the January, really. This is something that I thought was always kind of on the cards in the back of my head. We were talking, about... Well, this is basically all stems from January 6th, right? This stems from Trump being banned from pretty much every social media you can think of for essentially telling his followers or not disencouraging his followers to stop the insurrection that happened at the US Capitol on January the 6th over in Washington, D.C. And in order to make sure that he didn't encourage or support his supporters any further, these big companies took him off their platforms and made sure that he couldn't talk. Now, in the meantime, he set up his own website for Trump's blogs, but that's recently been shut down. And now he is attempting to sue Facebook, YouTube and Twitter over what I believe is violating the First Amendment, which of the First Amendment of the Constitution is the right to freedom of expression. Unlawful censorship. Trump on Wednesday said that he would lead a class action lawsuits against the chief executives Mark Zuckerberg, Jack Dorsey, and Sundar. Oh my goodness. Pichai? Oh, it's worth a try. But you get the general gist, right? So, Trump says it will be a pivotal battle in defense of the First Amendment, and in the end, I'm confident that we will achieve a historic victory for American freedom, at the same time, freedom of speech. Well, of course, this really isn't a freedom of speech issue. At least not really at this point. This is very much a issue surrounding how much power big tech has and their role to play in freedom of speech. Again, if you want to talk about reining in the power of big tech, we're all here. But in terms of them deplatforming you because you were encouraging a violent mob to continue doing what they were doing at the Capitol, then yeah, I'm pretty sure that comes under their own terms of service. And if terms of service, are protected under business law, not the First Amendment, because the First Amendment is, the government being infiltrating your freedom of speech and saying you're not allowed to say X, Y, and Z, which the government is very much not doing. This is a very private matter. A private company is allowed to, say who they want on their platforms, who they don't want on their platforms, and what the rules for their platforms are as well. And because of that, I don't think really Trump's got a case here. But we've been saying that for ages, right? Whether it was right to ban him is an interesting question. I think there is a debate to be had there surrounding how much of an influence places like Facebook and Twitter have. Because if you think about it, they essentially have privatized word of mouth, which is incredibly interesting if you think about it in those terms. Just being able to tell someone something from a distance is something that they've managed to find a way to make money on. And when you consider it like that, then maybe there is a conversation to be had around how much Facebook, how much control Facebook and Twitter or any other social media should have over its own platform. But in this instance, with this case, it doesn't seem like it's relatively, it seems like it's relatively cut and dry. You broke the terms of service, so long as they can point to a place in the terms of service where it says, encouraging violent acts is forbidden, these companies I don't think won't have a problem, especially since they're a lot richer than Trump. Lawrence writes, even without the private platform, pretty sure you can't tell people to go commit a crime. Boom! Preempted it before I even said it, my friend. Because that is, can't do that. If you again, so long as it's in the guy's terms of service, and it 100% will be, because remember, these companies have lawyers to make sure that their terms of service are incredibly undefeatable to the letter. This is all for show. The only thing this is going to do is to continue the anger and continue to fuel the rage of people who believe that cancel culture is out of control, and that the president the former president of the United States should be the current president of the United States, and that he is being silenced by the elite, which, it's not how it's going. But yeah, that's kind of all we can really say. You might be able to tell why I'm not dedicating a bit or a good bit to this story right now, because there's not a lot to say aside from the fact that I don't really think he'd stand a chance, and yeah, it's pretty obvious to see why. So those are the two quickie stories. I was going to do a little bit on Haiti, but I think I might save it because there's a lot of details coming out about that more recently, so I might save it for next week's show. We'll see about that. I'll make a tweet. Something will happen, and I will make sure you guys are updated. So stay tuned. I mean, if you want to keep updated, you know where to be. I keep saying follow the Twitch and the Twitter, and you guys have come through. I mean, look at that follower goal, No, it's that way, isn't it? Reflections. So, thank you very much for watching today's TMC. We talked about a lot today. We talked about the controversy surrounding England's win versus Denmark and football hooliganism. We talked a great deal about the new COVID lifting of restrictions and how the UK government wants to go forward with that. We talked a lot about how it seems to still be a little bit one rule for us and another rule for them. How pretty much every single group, aside from the government, might see the current plan as completely reckless and not true. Well, not true. Oh, it's definitely true. They definitely want it to happen. Unsuccessful. Let's say unsuccessful. They think it's going to be unsuccessful. And then we covered a few quickie stories, like the conviction of Wayne Couzens for the murder of Sever Everard, and Trump's recent suing of Facebook, Google, and Twitter. And to be fair, I think that's a pretty great deal on the plate there. And we managed to get through it in only about an hour and 20 minutes. So, wow, I really know how to condense a story, eh? Giving all of the juicy bits of information and plugging it straight into your ear holes. That sounds a bit weird. Oh, okay, yeah. Maybe it's time for me to go. But no, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of TMC. Stay tuned to the Twitter for when the next episode will be. Next week is looking a bit weird on my plate. We've got a few things happening, so I don't actually know which day it will be. But if you want to know which day it will be, you can load up the Twitter. You can follow me on there. Alternatively, wait a minute as I go and grab a link to the Discord, because Discord, you're not loading. Well, that's going to be great if you're not loading. We love it when the Discord doesn't load. But I can quickly, if I open up this, and that, and bada bing. There you go. Zing. Right. Join the Discord as well. The Discord, we share news. We tell everybody that it's coming home because it's coming home. And we overall have a great time sharing news and talking about it. So yeah, if you want to hop onto there, please do. Otherwise, I think the show's been pretty successful today. I will see you all next week and stay tuned for another episode of TMC. Love all of you. And fellas, it's coming home.